Okay, so once you have your finished patterns, you've marked in your dot points and you've put in your seam allowance and you've just marked in all the relevant information, it is now ready to cut from the fabric. So I have some poly cotton here, but you can also use calico for this, which looks similar to this piece here. The reason why we use these fabrics is just because they are a lot cheaper than using, like a silk or, actual expensive fabrics, just so that, mock-ups and things like that, we're not wasting nice expensive fabrics. Okay, so there are a few important things to keep in mind when cutting from fabric. Right, so we have got our selvage here, and it is usually quite a tight section of the fabric. The end is not fraying like this end here, and the selvage is a very, very important marker that we use when cutting. So the selvage will need to run as flat as possible. You can give your fabric a press if it's really creased, just to make sure it's all nice and straight and everything. Right, so I'm just gonna lay out my pattern pieces and I'm gonna show you why the selvage, or how we use the selvage rather, when cutting out. Right, so I have my center front pattern piece here, and I'm just gonna pin in the top corner over here just for now, just to hold it in place. Just notice how I'm leaving as little space around the pattern as much as possible, just so I don't waste all the fabric. Right, also don't put it straight onto the selvage as well, leave a little gap. You don't really want the selvage on your final piece once you've cut it. Okay, so I've put my pin in there, and I'm just going to measure, and I'm going to use this guideline here that runs down the pattern as a reference. So I'm going to measure, and it's around 4 centimeters, 4.2. You just take that measurement and you just make sure that it is the same there. You can just slip and slide your pattern in order to make sure that it is lining up and the exact same distance is there and is there. Now this will just keep it nice and parallel, and it just allows the grain of the fabric to be nice and straight. Right, so once we have our center front line matching up nicely with our selvage, then you can just go around and pin at a 45-degree angle all around the pattern, starting at the corners. Now it will depend on the fabric that you are using how many pins you need to use, but I mostly just put it in places where it's going to be important to cut it perfectly. So I'm marking, I don't know if you can see there, but I've put a pin now here on the dart legs, just so that I can cut nicely into that point. And I'm also just going to run one over here just along the side seam where it starts to curve, and that'll just help me cut it a bit better. Right, so now that that is in, we can now do the other side, which is the back piece. Now your finished patterns will look a little bit different, but I have put in all these different markers just to help you see exactly what it is that I'm doing. Right, so I have my my center back line here, so I'm just going to, let me move this over. I'm just going to do the same thing where I'm going to pin the top corner first, like that, and then measure that line towards the selvage, and then see how I need to adjust the pattern. So yeah, I'm going to take that measurement, transfer it down here, just so that it's nice and straight, And if you see that this sort of thing is happening where your patterns are too close to each other, you don't really want them to overlap because it's going to make cutting a bit difficult. So we can just move it over a little bit. Just repin it here in the corner and then measure again. Okay, and then transfer the amount down. Notice how I'm just sliding the pattern into place to make sure that it runs parallel. Right, and then once we have that done, we can put another pin in this corner and then do the same thing where you pin each corner first and then work your way through the rest of the pattern, pinning any areas where it is important. Again, just on the dart leg here, and then just a few pins down the side seam. And the hip line there. And just always make sure that the fabric is straight and it's not pulling and distorting. And then I'm also just going to run one here along the straight line here just to give it some more structure. Okay, so now once all your pattern pieces are pinned down, then you can start to cut. So I have here some nice sharp fabric scissors. Very important to use fabric scissors and not paper scissors. And then you can just go around and slowly and steadily cut around the pattern. And then just work your way around. Now make sure these corners where the dart is, that you don't cut into the pattern. Just want to go very slowly and gently around curves and areas where it's important. So I'm just going to cut in there, then go up. So you just want to be as steady as you can, making sure not to cut into the pattern and ruining any sort of important information that we're going to need once the pattern has been sewn. So there we go, there are our patterns. They are cut out from our fabric. We have our front here and our back here. And if you noticed on the back side how we've traced around the fabric using the pattern as a stencil. Right, and then I'll show you next how to notch it and how to mark all the relevant information.